Radio, a podcast produced by Winding Trails Media for writers by writers.
Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack.
Given 10 minutes for whoever is late to show up, and
Yep.
they didn't. So
He was the only other one on the Facebook page.
Okay. Welcome back to Right Pack Radio. This is your host and producer, David Allen Lucas, author of Crazy Things, and just now getting a break from doing a bunch of talks. And
not a long break, though.
Not a long break, because I do have another talk coming up in November. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but it is the Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend. Come down to the St. Louis Public Library Central Branch.
26th.
Thank you. I thought it was the 26th, but I wasn't positive. And it wouldn't sound like a complete fool. Only a partial fool. Anyway, November 26th, I am going to be giving a talk at their NaNoWriMo writing group about story structure. The 7 story structures that exist.
It's a bit late. I thought NaNoWriMo started November 1st.
It is. It
Well,
does.
it
But
lasts
they have
the
other
whole
speakers.
Okay.
They're having a speaker every week, and I'm doing the 26th.
I see.
So, yeah. Thank you. What you finna
Stop
see
flirting, you two.
What you finna
We're on recording.
is me sticking out my tongue at my fiance. All right.
Wife?
Well, yeah, by now,
Yes.
that's right. Recording
Good
time,
job.
fiance. Airing time,
Ham.
are only starting near by this time this airs.
The illusion now comes crashing down.
Wow. Alrighty, and now to
The
see if I
veil
can-
was thin and it
see
fluttered
if I
away.
can find a way to bury myself another way. I'm going to let someone else talk. With me today, actually, since she already spoke,
Oh yeah, now I have to figure out what name am I now? Okay, I'm Melanie some name.
Melody Kalani Lucas.
Yeah, that's good. Writer of science fiction, non-fiction, and fantasy.
you can find her nonfiction if you Google Melanie Colaney.
Yeah, definitely under Kalani for the non-fiction.
Brad R. Cook.
Not married to anyone in the room.
Yeah, no. I feel like the normal one now. I am the author of Steampunk, which is not normal. And you can find the Iron Chronicles out there. So we are dealing with Iron Horseman, which is the first one and is awesome. Iron Zulu, which is the second one and is very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming this November.
This is November.
Yeah, this is in November. So later this month, because it comes out on the 22nd of
No, I think
November.
we're airing in October.
Oh, we're airing in October. Okay, well still.
I'm so
November
confused about
22nd.
what time it is.
I am too. But that's okay.
The date that the book comes out does not change.
No. And you can find me October 26th. Or dang it. November 26th.
You were doing so well for a split second.
I don't feel normal anymore. So yeah, you can find me November 22nd at Main Street Books for the release of Iron Lotus, which is the third in the trilogy and is going to be awesome. And we're going to take over the day there. It's Small Business Saturday, so come out and support a small business and enjoy the first weekend of Christmas traditions, which, if you don't know, is a huge deal on Main Street. Everyone's going to be in period costume, including me.
My favorite part of Christmas on Main Street is that they actually have La Befana wandering around. La Befana being the Christmas witch.
Yes.
And many people don't know the story of the Christmas witch. It's a northern Italian tradition. The Christmas witch was a normal housewife, and the wise men came by asking where baby Jesus was, and she was too busy sweeping her walk to help them. So they left, and immediately gripped by guilt, she jumped on her broom and flew after them, but never found them. So she spent the rest of her days delivering presents to good boys and girls in penance for not helping the wise men. And that's La Befana the Christmas witch, and she'll be there.
She will.
I'm always looking for her to get a picture with La Befana.
And who are you?
Oh, my name is Jennifer Stolzer. I know things about Italian folklore, apparently. I'm an author of children's books and fantasy. Threadcaster is coming along. I was working on it earlier. It felt really good. Well, I hope to be bringing it up today as we talk about character conflict and character motivation. You can find out more about it at threadcaster.com. It's thread like string and caster like magic.
And also with us today is...
This is George Soroy. I'm the Vice President of the Missouri Writers Guild. I am an author of science fiction for the young adult reader. You can find my books, Excelsior and From Parts Unknown, both on ebook. Excelsior is also on audiobook and paperback. And hopefully by the time you hear this, I will have finished with Ever Upward, Part 2 of the Excelsior Journey. And I'm also the voice behind the audiobook of Excelsior and other works that will hopefully be out by this time. So
It's so hard when we speak in the past and post in the future.
Yes, it gets fun. Yes, George is also a voice actor, trained. I'm getting more and more trained, so I'm not put my shingle out yet.
Yeah.
All right, and with that, today we're going to talk about a subject which should sound basic, 101 writing, but surprisingly some people, some authors out there, actually I don't say some authors, some beginning writers have not quite grasped why this is
Some
important.
published authors have trouble with that too.
Some published authors have trouble with it as well, but what we're going to talk about, and I'm not trying to put people down, I'm just trying to put this in context, which is targeting conflict. In life, I don't know about everyone else around here, but personally I try to avoid conflict if it's avoidable. If it's not, that's a different story, and God help that person. But, generally, I don't want conflict in my life. I think that's fair with everybody. Can we have a story, an engaging story about characters, settings, and so forth that doesn't have conflict?
Can we? I feel like there's a way to. The essence of story generally is how do people change. I'm a firm believer in character-driven story. Even if it's a plot-heavy story, if we don't have a character that we want to ride on, we won't make it all the way through, in general. Because humans like social interaction as part of our makeup, our psychological makeup. So if there's a really strong character, then perhaps it's possible to tailor a story without a strong conflict. I don't know about any conflict. Because even if it's an internal human conflict, you gotta have something that you're tackling in a story for it to be actually considered a story.
Yeah, Jen, you just nailed it right there. It's such a major element is you need to have that sort of conflict in order to get the reader to want to keep reading. Mm-hmm. If they're not going to experience any sort of change, if they're not going to have something in their way that they need to get around or get through, then there's no point in them reading. They might as well just go ahead and live their own lives and just basically doing something simple as crossing the street. But even that, just simply crossing the street, will present more conflict because you have cars getting in the way. You have there's so many different possibilities.
I was thinking about it's like what's a story, like a character-driven story without a conflict. Think just a guy standing, sitting in his house. But even then, if you're telling a story about a guy sitting in his house, what is he thinking about? Like, what are we engaged in this scene about a guy who never moves from his chair? Like, well, there's got to be something interesting about him, and that something would be the conflict.
I was just thinking that a character sketch and a story that's all about a character sketch comes the closest. Mm-hmm. But even then, there's something about it that it maybe the conflict is internal, namely the reader has the finding out whatever it is.
But that's no longer a character sketch.
Yeah.
The moment you insert conflict, you've left the realm of a character sketch and you've entered into a story. It doesn't matter if you're in that room, it's an internal conflict. Mm-hmm. It's a man dealing with his own loneliness or his own solitude. That's the internal conflict. Uh-huh. So every story is going to have both internal and external conflict. If it doesn't, maybe you rethink that.
You need to rewrite your story.
Exactly.
Because it's really boring.
Yeah, because if it's only external conflict, yes, that's one way to tell a story, but it lacks any kind of real character. You know, your character has no growth. Your character has no movement. They're literally just interacting with the world around them, and that's it. And if you just have internal conflict, well, that can get a little angsty. You know, something has to happen outside the character. Hopefully the guy leaves the room, or maybe there's a bug in the room, or I don't know. But, you know, it tends not to be an exciting story if you don't have, if you only have internal conflict. So if you have both, though, it's this beautiful marriage, and that allows you to, you know, grow from there and create what is and end up being a really good story.
I was gonna say one thing. Not in fiction, not always do the characters change, or does the main protagonist change. And I don't mean just pick on Star Trek where the characters seem to reset after every episode.
Well, Star Trek is an episodic thing.
Right,
yes.
So anything that's in syndication, you know, take Seinfeld. Seinfeld likes to tote itself as a show about nothing, but it's about little tiny conflicts. It's just that the characters return to where they started at the end of every episode.
And I would throw out that, you know, Next Generation went long enough that we actually got to see arcs.
We did.
You know, we got to see little Wesley start off as like a little kid, and then finally become an ensign, who then
And
got
became
kicked
a
out.
butthole, and then,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, hey,
He
where he
made
ended
some-
up, that's a
he
different
made some
story.
poor
You know,
friends
even
and
Data
vanished
had a
from the canon.
growth, right, in his quest to become human. I would almost say that Picard had a growth because he went to Locutus and came back, and then he had problems and struggled with that. So
Well, Picard had a
Riker might be
growth.
the only one, but then he had all that angstiness with Troy. So.
Oh gosh.
And he eventually married her. But what I'm saying is there are some
She's
stories
better
out there
than
where
Worf.
the character goes through this incredible journey, and in the end gets to the point where they can choose to change or not change, and they choose not to change, and you see that journey becoming a tragedy
Yeah.
because they've chosen that route. So that is an aspect.
Yeah,
But
but even somebody like Kylo,
kind of right.
who
His
gets
story
to that
isn't over
moment
yet.
and changes. Yeah, well, this is true. But in just the story that we have,
Yeah.
you know, he has that moment where he gets to choose: am I going to change or am I not going to change? And he doesn't change. Yeah, he doesn't change. But even that, he's not the same as when he started the movie.
Yeah,
he
having-
has changed simply by reaching that point.
Well, what he's doing, which is really interesting, is that he has an inner, you know, like quote unquote, for lack of a better word, force. You know, like
Yeah.
that in itself is kind of like tugging him to go in that direction, and it's his own actions and it's his own decisions that are prompting him to go in a different direction, which is a really, you know, like it's a really cool new way to kind of go about the whole.
Well, you want to
sequel
talk
thing.
about conflict. Since we're talking about Kylo Ren, I mean, he
Darth
makes
temper tantrum?
the choice.
Yes.
Darth Child, yes. He makes the choice to keep down the dark path, but
Yeah.
he, as a character, is just dripping in conflict because he's constantly at war with himself. And that's actually one of the more interesting parts of this first film, and one of the reasons I'm looking forward to the next in this new trilogy, is because he's on a knife's edge. Just
Yes.
he could go either way. He could lose his mind entirely with the amount of pressure he's put on himself. And yeah, he stayed on the dark side the whole time, but he's got the most conflict of almost any character.
And who is Benicio del Toro going to play?
I'm pulling for Poe's dad because they look so similar.
We know he's one of the big villains, but we don't know who yet.
That's still be Poe's dad. You know, you get
Yeah,
that
yeah.
whole entire
Yeah.
father versus son entire
Conflict.
reign
Yes.
going on. But perfect. In order to have change, or in order to have any type of growth in a character, you have to have that conflict at some level, because it's like people like to use the term cocoon. People are breaking out of their cocoon, but I don't like that term. I like the idea it's steel and anvil, and you're being hammered into whatever shape that character's being hammered into whatever shape by the conflict on the anvil. Does that make sense? That's my term.
That's because you like swords.
I do like. I don't like swords. I love swords. Okay. What are some of the
Yes,
conflicts?
and
Go
anyone
ahead.
who sees the wedding pictures will know this.
One thing that really kind of sticks out with me is when it comes to asking about can you have a story and everything without conflict? Like, you can look at, you can point to, like, you can create a character who literally has everything handed to him, so he has no problems in life. Like, he's able to just kind of float through. But even that in itself, like, you have the possibility to create conflict in that, because you have someone, you can have an external conflict threatening to take all of that away. You can have an internal conflict where he's basically just kind of asking himself or herself, why am I so privileged? And maybe find out about their past, and all of a sudden see, like, why it is that they are given these sort of opportunities that no one else is. So there's definitely room for that, even with a character that is supposedly from a far away glance would have no actual conflict within themselves.
Oh, do you have
Sorry.
something?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, it just struck me as a lot of romances, especially a certain type of romance, all the conflict seems to be self-generated. They have this
Yes.
perfect life, and the only reason why they have a conflict is because they're creating it for themselves.
I consider
Yep.
that the I Love Lucy scenario.
Yeah.
She's always her worst enemy. It's the reason my mother can't watch that show. It gives her anxiety.
Wow.
I was going to kind of transition us a bit. We're talking about why conflict in character and in plot is so important. We're all writers in here. Is there an anecdote in your own writing in which you've noticed where that a lack, you've had to insert conflict, or you've had to find conflict because the story or the character is losing steam? Like, what are some conflicts that you've used in your own work to enrich your story?
Good
I don't know if
question.
I've ever had to find conflict or insert it. And that partly goes because I'm a plotter. So, on some level, I guess, yes, in my plotting stages, that's probably happened. But in the actual writing of it, that tends not to happen. Because I've already worked out all that conflict and, the directions that those go.
I've asked because more than once in the writing of my story, my novel that I said I would bring up again, I have abandoned my manuscript and started again because I realized that we weren't doing anything. And that my characters, while they had banter, because I love to write banter, they talked to each other constantly and they were developing their interpersonal connection, but they were doing nothing. And usually these things happen in what I call the bamboo trap scene, where my characters have fallen into a pit and are speared on sharpened bamboo sticks and can't get out. And when they do get out, they're in the exact same place they were when they fell in.
Before you guys jump in, I'm going to say, go back to one of our previous episodes about plotting.
I
Went into all of Jennifer's
all of my phrases.
colorful terms.
But so in those situations, my characters needed more conflict. So
The reason why I failed at pantsing was because of that problem. Namely, when I tried to be a pantser, it was boring. It's like I was just going through my character's day, and I was writing all this junk where nothing important happened, and I needed the plot to give me somewhere to write towards,
So did you go back in and restructure that story, or is that sitting in a drawer still?
Well, it actually is sitting in a drawer. I'm about to come back to it. I'm thinking about it again. But I need to know what I'm thinking. I basically need to write in a different way. Namely, write the important things as scenes, and then write whatever is necessary to connect them up.
But that's definitely one. To throw up to what you're talking about is in the lulls of story, in the middle of the book, and this is where subplots come in.
Yeah. Those sticky
because
middles.
you have your overall conflict, which for me is this fight against the Iron Horseman and everything that goes on there. However, then you have what are minor conflicts throughout the book, which I love to use for that very reason, because in the middle of every novel, you're going to hit those lull moments where it's not the climax, the exciting climax. It's not the beginning setup. You're in this kind of middle gray zone where stuff has to happen. Characters have to go places and do things.
See, I love that place.
Yeah,
I write
it's a great
entire
place.
books where that was just it.
But that's you need something there. and that's where subplots come in. Like in Iron Horseman, it's more of this kind of crazy journey. So each place they go to is a new series of problems and stuff like that. However, in Iron Lotus, the one that comes out in November, I don't necessarily have that. They're still traveling, but gone is the sense of going to this city and do something, going to this city and doing something.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of an overall arc. And what I found was then I got to have fun where I got to input a lot of internal turmoil in the group.
Uh-huh.
So there's a betrayer and, who that person is and how they act and do all that kind of stuff. Sets up all that conflict that kind of keeps you going through the middle part of the novel. And to be honest, I think is almost as much fun as the actual final climax of the big battle at the end.
My main character in Excelsior, Matthew Peters, he's somebody who he doesn't realize it until it's brought to his attention that he has inherited the power of a god. And he is basically just, and it's, once it's brought to his attention and everything, then it slowly begins to manifest itself. And so I remember one reviewer on Goodreads basically said that Matthew had everything handed to him. And when I was able to redo one more draft of Excelsior for before it got picked up by Rocking Horse Publishing, I was able to kind of go in and just see, okay, where can I, not looking for conflict where none existed.
Uh-huh.
But at that point, I was much more in tune with his character, and I realized that in a lot of ways, he's his own worst enemy. He's somebody who, he can basically be told that, you have this power, you have these abilities and everything, and he's not going to believe that. He's not going to have faith in himself that he can actually go ahead and do all this without making any mistakes. And that comes back in spades in the second one when he makes a really big mistake that he has to, that part of it, that a major element of his arc is, in the second one, is fixing that. And, basically going along that journey. But yeah, there was a time in the original 2010 draft of the book that, looking back on it, I can kind of see where they were coming from, where the reviewer was coming from. So
This is kind of going sideways to what you just said, but I was just thinking, with romances, like I kind of criticized before, and I do read romances, but I get bored. I don't read too many in a row because they're all the same and they're extremely predictable, and they very often they're well written and have good characters, but that's all they have.
I was just Sally, my cousin Sally, who's an award-winning romance writer.
Give us her whole name and where we can find her books.
Sarah M. Anderson, published in Harlequin. I'm apologizing ahead of time for your now cousin-in-law.
Yes.
Go on.
She writes Western romances.
Yeah.
Yes, she does.
This is a criticism of the genre in general.
Yeah, well, what you're criticizing is actually something that people who read romances like about the genre.
Yes.
So
But
there are no apologies necessary. She does it real well.
Yeah.
This is why I read paranormal romance.
Yeah, because there's something else added
Because there's
to
something
it, but-
else going on, and the romance is kind of a side story.
But that's the
The main side story.
point is, I like the character conflicts and all that as, again, the subplots, the in-between times, in with something else. So mixing the soap opera stuff in the lulls between the main plot. And actually, some romances do have a main plot.
I'm going to take us down the drain a little bit back to the beginning of what Jennifer was talking about. We've talked about in the past when things get sagging, when things get boring, borrowing from, I don't remember which probably was Dashiell Hammett. We talked about that's when you have somebody come in and kick down the door and have a gun.
Elmore Leonard.
Elmore Leonard, thank you.
Someone runs in with a gun, breaks in with a gun.
Right. And that's a great sudden.
Fedora's not here. She would have totally turned.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
she would jump.
That's our nod to Fedora.
But what I was going to say is that is a great way for introducing conflict when things go down, but it's also a dangerous one, in my opinion. The dangerous aspect is creating a conflict that does not reflect
Yeah.
what's going on with the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Hopefully you've set up your conflict
Exactly.
before that happens.
Does
Because
it
if a
make
guy
sense?
just charges in with a gun out of complete nowhere, I'm going to be like, what?
Yeah.
But if you've set up that there's a guy with a gun running around and all of a sudden he bursts in,
Mhm.
well, okay, I'm cool with that. We're good.
It entirely
Or-
depends on the kind of book you're writing.
This is true.
We were discussing Douglas Adams last
Yes,
night
yeah,
around the
okay.
fire, and that would be 100% appropriate in a
That
Douglas
would-
Adams book to have
yes,
someone
yes.
randomly burst in with a gun.
Yes.
Actually, no, it would be randomly burst in with something very much stranger than a gun. But
Well,
Yeah,
with
a gun
a-
that
with
shoots
a-
pansies or something.
Yes.
yeah.
The jam pistol.
Or no, the babblefish is babbling backwards.
Oh.
Now Yoda-like sound we make.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Anyway, I digress.
This is why 4, 5, 6 became, before 1, 2, 3. Because Yoda was the one who planned it all out.
There you
Ah.
go.
Oh.
Wow.
Uh,
So
yeah,
anyway,
what were we talking about?
conflict we talk about. Okay. Yeah. So that guy rushing in with a gun too can also start off a whole new arc that's in the story, but it needs to be relevant. You can't just have somebody drop in with a gun or drop in that situation and.
Yeah, you should always
Yeah,
set up
sure.
your side plots.
Right.
Your subplots should start off somewhere in the beginning third of your book.
Exactly.
Even if it doesn't come up until the end of your book,
Mhm.
or the middle third or the final, the front part of the final third, the first part of the third act. That I was having problems finding my words. But you should set these up. Every subplot has its own beginning, its middle, and its end, just
Right.
like everything else in your story. And by doing that, by weaving that tapestry, you're doing a bunch of things. First off, somebody may not know until that guy barges in with that gun that there was a guy running around with a gun, but then they're going to go back and read. And the beginning part of your novel, it's going to be there. And then that's something for the person who's rereading your novel, or a reason to reread your novel. I mean, the reason we reread novels is A, we love going on that journey again, but also, anyone who's read Harry Potter or, half my D&D novels, like Dragonlance Chronicles, you will notice things that were in the beginning of the book or the middle of the book that you glanced over and didn't have any clue about, which is beautiful. That's why we love movies and stuff like that.
Or let me just real quick and I'll let you go. Jump in, changing medias. That's why Babylon 5 was such a great TV show.
Always gotta reference Babylon 5 for real.
Exactly. I mean, I know there's some people out there going, oh, that really sucked. But where I'm going with this is, if you look at the writing of it, there are things in first season that are not tied up until the fifth season.
There are things in the pilot that aren't tied up till the final episode.
I just that's what Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Force Awakens has been on cable, and so they've been playing it a million times, which means I've just watched Force Awakens like 20 times in the last few days.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
There is nothing wrong with that.
If we
It's
ever
awesome.
need the script quoted, we'll come to you.
Exactly. But the thing I had never noticed until now is that Finn realizes and hears all those people scream out right as they die.
Uh-huh.
There's this huge moment where everyone's screaming and Finn's listening to it, but there's no one around him who's screaming.
Yeah.
On his planet, everyone's fine. And it's the exact same noise you hear a second later when the Republic's planets blow up. Which means Finn is most likely a Jedi.
He's force sensitive.
He's definitely force sensitive. He's listening to things, he's
I think we already knew
hearing
that.
all those
No,
voices.
Finn not so
but
much.
this is another one of those definites. It's like Finn is hearing these voices on planets away, and he's the only one around when it happens. So it's not like it's Han or,
He's having an Obi-Wan moment.
he is having an Obi-Wan or a Yoda moment. Yeah, it's kind of cool. And did
I hadn't
I
noticed
notice that the first time when I was sitting in the theater watching that? Heck no.
Well, you hadn't seen the planet be blown up yet.
Exactly.
And just the fact that he was able to not only wield a lightsaber,
Yes.
but even get a tag in on
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
on Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
The fact that he got a shot in there, that was if Kylo Ren just kind of steamrolled over him, then it would have been just like, okay, I understand. You can only get so far without any sort of training or being in tune with the Force, but he held himself for a
He
good period
did
of time.
for several seconds or a good minute or so.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Shout out for Finn Windu. Let's hope for that.
Yes. Purple lightsaber for you, Finn. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd be down with that.
Yes.
I forgot what I was
Okay.
going to say.
Finn Windu
So
will do that.
what are your favorite conflicts you like to put into your stories?
Well, we already brought up Babylon 5.
or actually, should I go with what kind of conflicts are there first?
Conflict, like
I mean,
general?
Like
General.
a list of them?
Yeah, I mean, we've got man versus man versus self, man versus God, man versus nature, man versus machine, or any combination thereof. Did I miss any?
Man versus society, did you include that?
Man versus society. No, there was something I missed. I knew. Any others?
Did you say man,
Man
versus
versus
nature?
woman.
Yes,
Yeah.
I said man versus nature.
Okay. I don't know, that went
No,
by
I
so
think you hit them
fast.
all.
Yeah,
If
so-
you didn't, you hit most of them.
Yeah.
So now that that's out there, and
If
we
you
also
missed
have
any,
some-
put it in the comments section on the Facebook
Yes.
page.
Yes.
So what are your favorite ones you like to deal with, or do you like to have layers of conflicts
Ugh.
going?
Hmm.
I like layers of conflicts. I'll be honest. And then I'm going to turn this over to Brett. And that is, I like to have an external conflict and at least one internal conflict with each character that is important to the story.
I'm a big fan of internal conflict. I really like making my characters suffer through several things. I usually like them to suffer with their own nature. So if they're a good person, I like to have them suffer with bad thoughts or, a trying, kind of thing that's going on. I love just straight up conflict too. It's something I've often been cited for in my writing is that I like fighting. It comes from, having been a fencer and a, swordsman kind of thing.
Right, what you know.
I like sword fights. I will fully admit that.
Yeah.
I can only think of like a couple of things I've ever written that don't have an actual sword fight in them. And if you gave me 5 minutes, I could probably work one in. So I do like that. There are a million other conflicts that you've mentioned. I am also one who likes to write about somebody fighting against the world around them. It's a common theme I go to. I'm sure you could probably break down each of our books into our own psyche and figure out how we are viewing the world and all that kind of stuff.
No, I can see my patterns just in all of my old drafts. So often I repeat scenes that I don't realize I'm repeating until I go back and see the whole book. It's like, oh, it's a scene where usually my characters are shouting, getting in shout fights until they eventually explode and start punching. That's what happens often that happened often in Threadcaster. I had to take those scenes out. Shout fights. Got to take the shout fights out.
You have to limit yourself to no more than 2 per book.
No more than 2 shout fights per book.
Yeah.
One of my favorites, conflicts. I really love to have characters dealing with the doubts in themselves. In Threadcaster, Kat is given this big legendary task to complete and told that she is the one destined to do it, and she doesn't believe that she is, the entire time through, but she's doing it because people tell her to.
I'm sorry.
That face you just made.
You just hit on the one I missed.
The one you missed?
Oh.
Man versus Destiny.
Destiny, yeah.
Mm.
So there's the
Yeah.
one I like. And on a smaller note, I've written a ghost story as well, and her conflict is definitely her versus her situation. The conflict is constantly driven not in terms of plot or in terms of journey, because the ghosts are tied to this haunted house. They're just haunting this house. But how does she cope with being a ghost? That's the conflict in that story. And that's a lot of fun too, because it's very character focused, and I like to write that kind of stuff.
I've always been partial to the man versus man, kind of good one-on-one conflict and everything, but it has to be earned. It has to be something that basically just allows our characters and everything to go on their own little journeys and find their way back to each other. Where it's just no matter what happens, around them or anything, it's always, no matter what, it's going to come down to these two. This one person versus this one person. That's why one fight that I truly hold in high regards is the end of the Matrix Revolutions. the final battle between Neo and Smith.
Yeah.
The fact that no matter what, whatever they've gone through, whatever the virus that Smith has become, all the different journeys that Neo was going on and everything, it's just going to come down to Neo and Smith, and the way it's put together and everything, it always blows me out of the water like when I see it. And one thing that I will, I'll always be proud to be a fan of and really kind of take to my grave is a major storyline that happened in pro wrestling, which is one of the great rivals of all time, which is Steve Austin versus The Rock. And because it's something that started out in 1997, feuding over the Intercontinental Belt and everything, and then they went off on their own journey throughout, from December of 97 all the way through to March of 1999, and so they wound up going through like a whole WrestleMania without feuding with each other. But through all the different twists and turns that all the storylines went through and everything, WrestleMania 15, main event, Steve Austin versus The Rock for the WWF Championship. And it's one of those times when you can kind of point at and just like, that's why I'm a fan. That's why I love it. And because of the way that it was built, because it went through all these different twists and turns, all these different other guys got involved in everything. But at the end, it was down to this one versus this one. And that was it.
I think it's important to note, since you're probably the biggest wrestling fan we've had on the show.
Yeah.
The wrestling conflict is not something that we've brought up here before. It's important to make a note that that this professional wrestling is very much a soap opera.
Oh yes.
For people who've never watched wrestling, there's
Athletic
an element
theater,
in the ring, and then there's also an element behind the scenes where you get to see these characters fighting with their managers and with each other.
And it's very much a character.
Exactly.
Oh, yes.
95% of it
all
is
of
a
these,
show.
yes,
True.
all of these are very, very large personalities, and that's the fun part.
But at the same time, the most successful characters are the ones that the wrestler themselves is able to use elements of themselves and explore and blow them up to 11.
Well, Hulk Hogan was Hulk Hogan, no
Yes.
matter. That's
Hulk Hogan is still Hulk Hogan. He's still
He adopted that name and that persona, and that's just who he is. It's
Oh,
who
yeah.
we know him as.
Yep.
Well, and then even that character change. He went from being bad guy to good guy. I don't know if he went back or not.
He did go back
He
for a period of
started out as a
time.
good guy, then he went to a bad guy, then he went to a good guy.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I knew him from bad guy to good guy because that's when he started doing G.I. Joe stuff and then he went back to bad guy.
You think of Sergeant Slaughter?
Yeah.
No, I thought he was
Sergeant Slaughter was on G.I. Joe.
Okay.
That was his thing. It was not long after.
At
It was
what
after
point
he
did
was-
Tropic Thunder happen?
Tropic-
No, what is it? The
you're
one where
thinking
the
of-
TV show. They
Thunder
always
in
had.
Paradise.
That one, yes.
Thunder in Paradise. That happened during the time. That was during the time, actually, like around '93, when he had decided to step away from wrestling, go into television, go into
Trying to
movies and
have
everything.
Hollywood Hogan.
And then when he bombed out of that, he was courted by Ted Turner in
Yeah.
WCW. And then after 2 years, then they made the switch, became a bad guy, and the rest is very much wrestling history. So yeah, because that was
All right,
huge.
that was a tangent. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Well, no, but actually,
Right,
The conflict.
But that was conflict.
Yeah.
Because the reason why was because for 2 years he was not cheered. He was not looked at as a good guy. So
Right.
they made the switch,
Mhm.
and it worked out great.
And I'm going to say too that while I'm not a fan of professional wrestling, I do recognize the storylines, and it is such a level of, how do I say this, acceptance or writing of that storyline that causes some people to actually believe that what they're seeing is in fact real.
Yes.
To the point that you will hear people talk about soap operas,
Mhm.
and they believe that have believed that these characters are real.
Yep.
And that is a level of writing and of conflict that I think all of us want to aim at.
Yeah,
Mhm.
talk about audience engagement.
And what
Yeah.
people
Oh, yeah.
should realize is with some of these things they do on professional wrestling, if they were real, they would be serious felonies.
Well,
Yes.
yes.
Oh, yes,
I'm talking
yeah.
about the fiction.
Yes, I know, and I am too. It's just some people believe they're real and just don't quite connect the fact that if they were real, people would be arrested and sent to jail.
Wait,
Mhm.
you mean I'm not allowed to bash a guy's head in with a chair?
No, it's not
I
real.
thought
you
that
can.
was.
It's kidnapping people and forcibly
Yeah.
marrying
Oh,
them.
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Those kinds of fun
Yeah,
stuff.
Yeah.
You're in tune with this. I like it.
This is just from commercials. I've never actually watched.
rest.
It's just like everything you're saying. It's just like, yeah, that happened. Yeah, that happened.
Everything
yeah,
I know about wrestling, I learned from Max Landis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brad, you've been very patient.
I was going to throw on was that what George is talking about is basically the essence of conflict,
Yeah.
and how you write really good conflict. You build on it.
Mhm.
The reason why this was so successful is because they spent years building up to The Rock and Steve Austin.
Yep.
It was a huge thing. Everyone wanted this to happen, and they held it off for a number of years until they finally gave it to you. By the time you got it, you were so excited for it that it was insane. I mean, I remember it was
Yeah.
the biggest fight of
That
basically
was
the
it was
millennium.
fantastic. Like the way that it was built up, like exactly
And they
what you
saved
said.
it for the millennium. I mean,
Yep.
they put it right there in '99 for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they built up to it. They had these massive storylines going. You know, each time everyone was calling for it, and in doing so, by building up to your main conflict, which is what we all are trying to do in our books anyway, by doing that, you're building in that excitement. You're building in that want for it, that desire for it, which makes it even 10 times more. You know, kind of seep into your soul. You know, and to flip it back into our books, I just wrote the end of the trilogy. It was the most interesting thing I've had to do as a writer so far, because on the one hand, I'm writing now for fans, because anyone who's read my books has read now 2 of my books, and they're obviously looking forward to the 3rd one. I'm ending it. I know it's the end. I'm not going to do a 4th one or a 5th one or anything crazy like that, so I knew I had to put in a definite bam ending. And I was, you know, I've been building some of this stuff I've been building up for 2 books. So that was kind of fun to bring in, kind of fun to kind of pull all of it together. You know, for anyone who's read my novels, there's been a common theme running through as to whether or not Alexander was going to become a Templar Knight, or whether he was going to become an Iron Horseman, become one of the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. And I play with that, and I finally got to do it, and I finally got to have those moments and just really just bite into that juiciness. It's good stuff. Look forward to it.
And I'm going to go back, I think what you're underlining and what we've been talking about with, thanks to George bringing in the pro wrestling aspect, is someplace where I've criticized a little bit of Batman versus Superman in the sense of, I said they just did too much. That if you're new to the universe, you really didn't, it was really hard to follow. If you're a fan like myself and others around in this room, you knew what was going on, you knew, you could pretty much relate. I think that's one of the things that DC has had problems with so far, including with Suicide Squad, is you're missing the build-up chapters.
Suicide Squad should have been R.
It really should have.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Batman, Superman, that's, if we've read the comics, we already know that story.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. But because of the comics, we've had to build up to it.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking about the movie versions only.
Yeah.
Forget the DC comics exist, which would be hard to do, but
Right.
pretend. Just be with me for a second.
Okay.
It's like suddenly you have a wham bam, wait a minute, why is this issue going on?
Wham, bam.
Okay, I don't know who's first, so people
Um,
are
just-
first.
Just a quick thing, just to kind of build on what you said about Batman v Superman. The main problem with this, main problem I have with it is the fact that they had a conflict built in that looked like it was going to be earned, and at the last minute they chickened out.
Yes.
And that right there, I'm not going to give any spoiler details or anything about
No,
it. You know, like,
darn, I was about to.
but you know, like if
we've
you
already spoiled.
if you
Awakens.
have characters that are right about to clash and everything, and with good reasons why, you don't go ahead and just cut the legs off of one of them. You just don't do that.
You.
Since we're talking about earning a conflict and building conflict, what are some strategies for building conflict? Like, how do we create that coveted anticipation before the explosion? Is it just time? Is it just referencing?
Well, here's a cliched version.
Uh-huh.
You killed my father, or you killed whoever, you know.
But is that building a conflict? Now, taking that scenario as an
The revenge
example,
conflict is definitely a
yeah, perhaps if you start the story with that being either your main characters, you know, it's like you start with him having a father and his father gets killed, or we'll take Princess Bride. And Indigo Montoya's whole mantra was to find the six-fingered man who killed his father. And when he finally gets him in front of him, that is that's a very satisfying payoff because you got to see the real emotion that was coming there. We didn't see his father get killed, but you saw in the character how important it was for him to fulfill this.
And he reminded us hundreds of times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He built that anticipation through repetition.
Right, exactly. To throw it over to Star Wars, where you have, Ben Kenobi sets it up. Vader killed your father.
Yeah.
And then he meets Darth Vader, and instantly there's that angst and anger. You killed my father, kind of deal. Had that not been there, we would have had a guy who was ticked off because he, like Luke would have been angry because captured Leia.
Yeah.
Who I don't think he would have known at that point was his sister.
No.
Like
the only reason he knew that he was his
people.
sister is because he was force sensitive.
Yeah. So you've got all of that, but by inserting that "you killed my father" storyline is where that really amps it up, and you have Luke slipping to the dark side as he's in the fight.
No, I'm going to add to that. What starts the father journey for Luke, because Luke's whole story is about not only discovering his forceness and being a Jedi, it's about redeeming his dad and getting his dad back.
Yes.
What starts that off is not Obi-Wan. What starts it off is him sitting in his little dugout on the moisture farm with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and he says the droid said something about an Obi-Wan Kenobi. Who's that? And then Uncle Owen says he went missing about the same time as your father. Yeah. And Luke says he knew my father. And in that moment, we know that Luke really cares about this missing figure in his life. That's the moment where we see all the hope he has that maybe he'll find his father again, and then to find out not only that his father was killed, the loss. Yeah. His father's still alive, but he's evil. The loss. And then the Return of the Jedi, when he never stopped believing that he was going to get his dad back.
But there's also that yearning for just wanting to go out and be a part of something greater as well. Like he's sitting there, like you said, like he's in his bunker and everything, playing with his little shuttle toy. Yeah. Just saying, Biggs was right. I'm never going to get out of here.
Not bad at all.
How much though did Anakin have to love going back and killing Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen? Because he'd been just stewing on them.
He wasn't there.
He wasn't. He sent his goons there.
He sent his goons. So he knew
his goons were following the path of where the droids had been.
Not get into lore.
But one thing
it's so much fun then.
But one thing is,
we'll sidetrack the whole discussion. We already did that with wrestling.
But I'll say, listen to the Star Wars radio drama, because unlike the movie where you can see Luke playing with his little shuttle, he's listening to an Imperial recruitment tape. And the same type of enthusiasm. It's really fun.
We're setting up Luke's character with what he wants and what he desires without him coming right out and saying, boy, I really want this. Boy, I really desire this. Giving us a sense of us understanding his character through how he behaves and him being alive.
Well, not only that, but I'm going to add to that by saying we're establishing it by what he thinks he wants.
Yes.
Yeah. Because one major element that that I've always really kind of taken and run with was at the very beginning of the duel in The Empire Strikes Back. The first thing you see, once they both face each other, it's Luke who activates his lightsaber first. Mm-hmm. It's Luke who takes the first swing.
Right.
You can see right there he's already lost.
Yeah.
He's already lost. He is not ready for this, and that's a great thing about that
fight is actually really good for showing just how bad off Luke is.
Yeah. Vader's playing with him the entire time.
Vader plays with him the whole time.
Yeah.
Luke never takes any of the high ground or has any he never gets anything over on Vader.
However, eventually in that fight he does score a hit.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. He knocks him down. He knocks him down at the Carmen Freeze chamber.
Yeah, he knocks him down a flight of stairs and he makes a funny noise.
No. I'm talking about the hit on the shoulder.
Yeah. Well, that one, right where. Yeah. And that's where Vader really just all right, enough playing.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had it.
I've had it. Yeah. Here's your quote unquote spanking.
Yeah.
Time to school, you son.
Yeah. It's like,
Poor
okay,
Ray.
enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Poor
This
Ray's about
stopped
to go into the
being
second movie
fun.
where everyone loses a hand. yeah.
Oh,
Put
no.
a hand in every movie except for
That's
maybe
the second
first
movie.
ones.
It's the second movie.
No, well,
Yeah.
first one,
Yeah.
Obi-Wan cuts off a guy's hand.
No,
And
yeah,
then
okay,
you
but
can-
I'm talking about
I
your
know,
main
you're talking about
Skywalker
major.
No,
characters.
but now we're getting down to nitpicking.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
anyway, back to
conflict.
See, here we have a conflict right
Yeah, we're
now.
developing
Yeah.
conflict with our desire to be nerds.
Yeah.
George Lucas has a thing for lobbing off limbs. Let's
Yes.
just throw that out there right now. I mean, the
Well,
guy.
that's
We'll
what
see if JJ
lightsaber
has that
is.
same passion
Exactly.
for lopping off limbs. You know,
Uh-huh.
just
We missed it because Chewie was supposed to rip off arms in this one, and it got left on the cutting room floor.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
wow.
That was something
Yeah.
that was set up in the first film.
I know. It would have been such a payoff.
yeah.
It would have been. I would love to have seen Chewie just.
Yeah, and it's the guy from
absolutely lose it.
Jakku, which
Yeah,
is
I
really
know.
the best part. I can't think of his name, but the
Yeah,
big
yeah,
dude from
yeah,
Jakku.
Oh.
Oh, Unkar plugged? Is that
Yes,
his name?
yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You mean
See,
Simon Pegg?
Unkar was originally supposed to chase them around, trying to get the Millennium Falcon back,
Mhm.
and then Chewie was going to rip his arms off. That was
Oh,
that was one
man.
of the storylines, and they didn't go with it.
Well, they had a lot to tackle.
Simon Pegg did not get the crazy,
Sorry, Simon.
involvement that he wanted. Or
Well, he's still out there. He may have a
Yeah,
a
He'll
shot.
come back in the next
He
one.
can-
Yeah, we
you
got
know,
future movies.
Yes, we do.
He could be the arm that that gets lost in,
Hey, there
in the
you
next
go.
one. So.
Calling it now.
But to get back to your original question, how
Conflict,
does
yeah.
it put conflict? So we've obviously worked the father and the revenge plot
Mhm.
pretty well there. Anytime you take anything away from your main character, so if you have a character take anything away or put in a roadblock right in front of them, that's instant conflict. And by that, it can be a myriad of things. It can be, some sort of actual roadblock where he's stopped them right in their tracks and they can't go forward until they do something. It can be a series of mental blocks or, something internal that, you've put upon the person. But that's a really good one. Anytime you can have your villain sort of set up problems, conflicts, roadblocks for your character, your story is going to go to good places.
Yes.
Oh, just speak. We brought up Suicide Squad earlier. One of the ways they brought up conflict there was another type of conflict. I suppose it would be man against himself. That was the. Sorry, it just didn't work that well for the movie because they were trying to do so much in the movie. But
Yeah.
it's a good way to do it. The El Diablo character, the fire,
yeah.
the guy who made fire. He lost his temper and burned his family to death.
Yeah.
Pretty stark conflict.
So,
being
point-
afraid of yourself and what your potential
And
is.
basically, it wasn't so much that he was afraid of himself, although he was. It was
Uh-huh.
more the guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
Yeah.
taking away people and taking away power,
Mhm.
skin, giving him fear in exchange and guilt, and that's a great man versus himself moment. Is when when you're either fighting against some sin you've committed or something in the past that can't be taken back, or if you're fighting against what you are as a person. Like he was a fire starter, He was pyrokinetic, and that was who he was and what his sort of, in terms of superheroes, that was what his identity was. Because superheroes, they take on the identities of their power so often.
Right.
And what kind of mental struggle do you face when you're known as a pyrokinetic when your powers are what killed your loved ones? It's like I would see a whole movie about him based on that, because that's my kind of conflict. I get into that kind of stuff. That's why I love Babylon 5 so much.
Yes.
and that's why your favorite character was Londo.
Yes, indeed, my sweet baby Lana Millar.
One day Peter might listen to this, and that'd be just an interesting response back.
My BFF Peter Jurassic.
Yes.
Yeah, I hope he does listen to this and he can learn about how much his character has influenced my understanding of writing, because he did a good job.
Be sure to tag him when tag his name when it goes
Yeah,
up. So
right.
yeah.
Well, another good one I also
Embarrass me.
Another good conflict I always say is to capture your characters.
Mhm.
Have your villain capture them. It's the
Right.
Bond, the Bond trope. You can also then reveal your plot details.
You got me the
Yeah.
points.
and yet that is broken in one of the Bond movies, Goldfinger. What, do you expect me to talk? No, I expect you to die. Great line.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And on that note, anything more on conflict? We've kind of gone around the circle and
Yeah,
around
that was
the star a few times, but
That was a bit of a maypole of an episode, wasn't it?
yes, it was. It was fun. I love these. Yes.
I will go ahead and say that like the really conflict is in so many places. Even if something as basic as like a game,
Mm-hmm.
like a basic sport, not bringing up pro wrestling, but just in any sport, like you can see that. You can see like not just in the game itself, but what is going on with each team.
Right.
You can really kind of see that. One of the greatest moments for me as a New York Giants fan was watching Super Bowl 42 and seeing this ragtag group of this 10-6 team, going up against the great 16-0, like at that, 18-0 at that time, New England Patriots, and just watching as that game developed, you can see as it unfolded that you have this team of absolute perfection. Where if they just win this one last game, then they're going to be looked at as the greatest ever. But you can see that weighing against them as it went on, and all of a sudden, like seeing just what sort of conflict they were going through.
Yeah.
And this underdog, Giants team was able to take advantage and pull off the greatest upset in modern history.
Mhm.
So it's just like those, all you have, conflict, literally, it is everywhere.
It is.
It is everywhere, and all you have to do is just open your eyes and look for it, and you will see it. And if you won't see it, then there's something wrong with you, which in turn is a conflict.
Yep.
Right.
So,
No,
Yeah, just let it into your novel because it's there.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
already
you're
in there. You just have to make, because your novel is full of humans.
Right.
Just take a look at it, realize what you're dealing with. There's something in there for you to work with. If you find yourself in a bamboo trap, you can get yourself out.
Right.
Mhm.
Just never sit on the plot couch.
Don't sit
Yeah.
on the exposition couch.
Exposition couch. Sorry.
Yeah.
I
You
apologize.
get
That's
a
great. I
case
love
of
that.
the plots.
Yeah.
Yeah, the case of the plots is when you vomit plot onto your neighbor. And the exposition couch is when you sit down and talk about lore all day without actually furthering the plot.
Right. That's right.
I
I'm
love
sorry.
this.
I screwed up. And on that note, I'm going to say tune in next week for yet another interesting talk in the writing industry. And by the way, I'm doing a shout out to one fan that requested us to talk about thrillers and what makes a good thriller. Next week we are going to be recording thrillers and noir. So we're going to be exploring that, and that's because it was requested by a fan.
Right.
So if you're a fan and you have a topic you'd like us to talk about, comment on our Facebook page. We'd love to hear it, or tweet to us.
Somebody commented Star Wars episodes. So we can just sit around and talk about Star Wars all day.
That's every episode.
Oh, please. You're talking
the fun part is figuring out how to weave it in.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that's,
yeah.
Exactly.
Talking about Star Wars, I've gone from watching movie episode 1, 2, all of Clone Wars 3, all of Rebels up to where it's at, then 4, 5, 6, and 7, and also the radio dramas. And on that
I
note,
did that for right before Force Awakens.
You
Yeah,
guys
there
need
you
to
go.
stop measuring your lightsabers. You're both fans, okay?
I
what
just
color?
agreed. That's awesome.
Huh?
What
I said
color?
that
What color is your lightsaber?
How many
Okay.
prongs does it have?
Mine is always green and it has one prong.
And tune in next
goodbye.
week. Take care. Have a great week writing.
Oh.
Have you ever written an audio play? Have you even considered writing one? Visit www.windingtrailsmedia.com because currently we are looking for audio plays to produce. Again, that is www.windingtrailsmedia.com and visit calls for scripts. And while you're at it, please sign up for the newsletter and you will find that icon at the bottom of every page.
Did you know that Right Pack Radio has an international audience? How would you like to reach that audience in regards to your books, your book services, your author services, or more? Go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com and look under advertising for more information. If you don't have a script, that's not a problem. We will be happy to work with you. Once again, go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com for more information.
The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her.